Welcome to episode 4 of FFD Firehouse Factoids, part of your weekly video series from your Planning and Research Division. Today's particular report should come as no surprise to most of you. It's a report you are all too familiar with, the Daily Compliance Report. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit today about the design, the layout, the actual time parameters, and where these times are actually derived from. Now, this particular report is one that we refer to as semi-automated. It does not run itself. It does have a human element to it. So some of these calls do require us to go back into Firehouse and make changes to districts, and we have to condense explanations for grouping later on. So the software application we use to run this is called Crystal Reports. It does make a live connection back to Firehouse. So we are able to make that connection to those tables that we want to see. Some of this you're probably familiar with. And you can see here are some of the formula fields, the custom fields, that just tell it exactly which elements we'd like to see and how we'd like to see it. Okay? So we won't spend too much time on that piece. Just wanted you to see it in a real kind of rough draft mode here. Obviously not final copy, but we want to talk a little bit about where the times actually come from. Big question we get. And let's pay specific attention when we talk about fires on this timeline on fire progression, particularly this mark here between 8 and 9 minutes when firefighter survivability drastically decreases as well as civilians. Okay? Now if you look at this chart, you can see from 0 to 3 minutes we're already behind when we start. Now that's time of 911 call here at 3 minutes, okay? So you can see by the time the 911 call is placed, we're already behind in regards to this particular timeline. Off to the left here you can see our moderate risk performance chart, part of our accreditation model, also within our standard of cover. Specifically, we want to look at our total response time on this one. How long did it take us from 911 call until that first unit arrived? And how long did it take from 911 call to get that full effective response force equaling 15 people in play? Okay, that's what we said we needed to achieve the critical task we set forth based on our benchmark evolutions, and that essentially is what we're trying to beat. Okay. Now when you look down here at EMS, I get it, every call we have is not necessarily ALS, but when we do have a dual unit response with one engine or one truck and a squad that equals at least 5 people, those ALS calls in CAD, that's our level 2 response category. And you can see here when we look at total response time for first unit, 6 minutes and 14 seconds. And then time where we actually got 5 people on scene, 8 minutes and 23 seconds for 2016. So that just gives you an idea of how we kind of fit into that window, okay? 1710 is obviously a really important standard for us. It defines the times for a professional organization, those benchmark times that we should be able to meet. I know it's a little difficult to see, but I put you a screenshot here for a metro area, that area that's above 200,000 people. And for those of you that don't know, our FY18 data, 208,729 with Fort Bragg, 185,323 without. Okay, now we refer to baseline times, benchmark times, baseline where we're at, benchmark where we want to be. You can see those first unit, second unit times. So we made that daily compliance report to kind of fit this. And you'll notice our ERF times, if you looked at last year, our old ERF times were based on 10 minutes and 24 seconds. We've reduced that time down now to 10 minutes. Now this here is what we call a cascade of events. As we look down through here, we leave a state of normalcy, discovery of event. So this is what we refer to as soft data. We can't actually track that data until that 911 call is actually placed. Now I want to skip down to right here, this alarm processing time. Our expectation within that, based on NFPA 1221, is they get all calls out in at least 60 seconds 90% of the time, and all calls 90 seconds 99% of the time. Okay, so for DCR purposes, we really only look at this at a minute and a half, but really the concept is to make us look better whenever we look at it like this. Okay, if they're doing well at a minute and a half, then hopefully if we're achieving that goal every day like we should, then when we look at 60 seconds we're also doing well. turnout time, you can see there's a completely different expectation there. For turnouts, the idea is for EMS incidents, typically for those level 1 responses, that's a single unit response. The expectation is they get that call out a little bit quicker, so we hold them to 60 seconds for those medical calls, 80 seconds for fire calls. Now your daily compliance report is set at 1 minute and 30 seconds, but 80 seconds ideally based on 1710 is where we'd like to be. Okay? So now let's really dig into this daily compliance report and talk about it a little bit. I've omitted the date. I've also omitted the shift. When we look here at alarm handling, that's that dispatch notified time until your actual alarm time within Firehouse. Turnout time for the first unit. Now a lot of confusion sometimes on what that first unit is. Is that the primary unit or is that just the first unit that turns out? What we're looking for specifically, any of those units that were dispatched on the initial alarm, not working fire units, second alarm units, initial alarm units. Was there at least one unit that checked en route within that 1 minute and 30 seconds? Okay, that's what we're looking for there. That travel time, so that time from first unit en route to that first unit's on scene, it does not have to be the primary unit, but ideally it does need to be a unit off that initial alarm. Okay, benchmark time per NFPA 1710 is 4 minutes for this, not 5 minutes and 12 seconds. Your ERF time, so how long did it take us based on whatever critical task was needed to get that full complement on scene. We've set that time at 7 minutes and 24. And of course, total response time, we talked about that in the last video series, time of 911 call until actual unit arrival. Now, you're familiar with this layout. I want to bring you out to a raw data side, an Excel spreadsheet. I've exported all that data out, and I just want to see you to see it here in kind of a raw way. When we look at call processing, we'll go here. We'll select anything that's greater than 1 minute and 30 seconds. You can see here for this particular incident, we had 3 of them on that day. And then here when we look at turnout, anything greater than 1 minute and 30 seconds, okay? So what happens here, you see we have these incidents. Now what we'll do is condense these times. In this particular situation, the reason that was given, the times appear to be messed up by dispatch. For this is dispatcher error, okay? You can see on this particular incident, none given. Time of day, always a big one. The big thing that we ask on time of day, put a reason with it. Time of day in itself doesn't really tell us anything. Was it because you were sleeping? Was it because you had to get dressed? Were you just delayed going to the restroom? So give us a little bit more than just time of day. That really helps us in the long run. You can see here this one, delayed due to personnel in restroom. And here, personnel in shower. Now, we will never name call on this DCR. So for those of you that are putting specific names in, that's okay if somebody would want to reference it later, but for the sake of the organization, we will never put any individual names in here. So ideally, that's what that particular piece would look like, okay? Now if we look at first unit travel times, remember here we're looking at anything over 5 minutes and 12 seconds from en route to on scene. On this particular day we'll go, and I know there's a much easier way to do this. I'm just showing you this for instructional purposes, okay? Now all of these, what we're looking at is this particular column here. Everything here exceeded 5 minutes and 12 seconds. On this particular explanation, I'll go over. You can see there was an issue with the MCT. They hit the wrong button on the MCT, but they also noted they used the radio. So in this situation, remember, based on policy, MCT used and radio, okay? Primary unit, engine 2 area, but you can see here, this particular field, I know it doesn't have a header on it. This is unit, this is district. So although they said here in their explanation they were delayed on scene to being in engine 2's area, they actually recorded the district as FF14. Okay, so that would be primary unit in FF02 area. So on and so forth. You kind of get the idea there. The ERF times, that effective response force, we look for delays in travel. We don't ask for explanations for that from you. Basically, we just list any of those units from the initial alarm that did have a delay that exceeded that 7 minutes and 24 seconds that we're looking for. And then here on total response time first unit, that's your 8-minute mark, we put whatever time parameter contributed to that overage. Okay, that's really important. So when we look down here for this particular day, we had 1 total response time overage for first unit and 1 total response time overage for ERF. You can see the time parameter where the overage actually existed was travel time for both of these. Okay, so alarm handling was good, their turnout time was good, but that travel time was over. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a little bit more on the DCR. I know it was not all inclusive, but hopefully it answered a few of your questions. Something we always enjoy doing is talking about that DCR. In the quote of Sam Walton, very famous Walmart figurehead, most of you are probably familiar with, communicate everything you can to your associates. The more they know, the more they care. Once they care, there's no stopping them. Take care and be safe out there.